Hello, guys. This is Lydia, the lifestyle coach, coming to you with another live feed. And what we are doing here is we are ending eating disorders using nothing but your brain. Huzzah! And with doing that, we're talking about binge eating, we're talking about bulimia, we're talking about overeating and body obsession and food obsession and yo-yo dieting and all the ways that our eating gets disordered. And we're going to talk about something really important today. Now, I will say up front that we are going to acknowledge, look at the title. If you think it's past trauma, we are going to acknowledge that trauma exists. We are going to acknowledge that rape exists. We are going to be talking about that. So if that is not something that you want to hear about, then this is probably not the right place for you. And this is a very important topic, and that's why I'm speaking on it. And I want to treat it with the sensitivity, and I also want to treat it with the honor and the truth that it deserves, because this is one of the most damaging lies out there about eating disorders, which is just a really rough thing because it just adds insult to injury. So if you think that you have disordered eating, if you think that you have weight problems, if you think that you have self-esteem, emotional eating problems because of past trauma, this is what you absolutely need to know. And we are going to break that down today because it's really important to recognize. And I mean, first of all, it's hard to be a woman in a lot of ways. It absolutely is. And I acknowledge that, and I live in that water as well. And it is a common thing for women to be raped and hurt and molested. The stats are 1 in 5 women. And when you really start thinking about that, those are the stats. Think of how many rapes, think of how many, violations get unreported. Because if you really got to know a lot of women, like we do, and like a lot of you guys know, if you really start talking to anyone who is a woman, you start finding out that it is an extremely common thing for women to be hurt. Like the hashtag Me Too movement. It woke up a lot of people to just how common this is. But it woke up people that didn't realize already just how common this was. But the hard thing is that we live in a society where there's so much shame around that happening. There's so much shame around being hurt. There's so much stigma around it that although it is so common that people don't talk about it, and then we start thinking that we're the only ones and that it's not a common thing. And so we start feeling very isolated and alone. And sometimes it feels like no matter who you are, it doesn't matter how successful or hardworking or privileged you are, you spend time as a woman trying not to get raped. You put things in place to not get hurt. You know that no matter how many things you put in place, it can still happen anytime because we're a woman living in this world. You go on a date, you go to a party, you get in an Uber, you spend time with your husband. You can really be assaulted and raped at any time. And so it is an extremely common thing. And it's not any fault of your own. This is something where we are a victim to somebody hurting us, somebody without consent violating us. And just because we live in a world that accepts men raping women and supports them in it, that doesn't mean that it's okay. But we acknowledge that that is the world that we live in right now. Yes, it should change. Yes, it is changing in a lot of ways. No, we are not nearly there yet. And it is still an extremely common problem. And I have so many personal friends who have been raped and haven't reported it. And why is that? Because it is worse. It is worse for women so much of the time to report it than to not report it. I have a friend who was assaulted by her professor, and it took over her entire life with all the hoops that she had to jump through to report it and explain herself over and over again and be doubted by everyone and be in the place where she's guilty until proven innocent of doing something to prompt her being assaulted. She defended herself that she didn't contribute to someone else hurting her. Like, think of how incredibly messed up that is. And in the end, there was absolutely no justice. In the end, it had just taken hundreds of hours from her life. There was a quick little slap on the wrist and, hey, stop hurting people, even when it was very clear that that happened. And the person who really suffered the most was her, even after reporting it. I have so many friends that, they've been assaulted by a Lyft or Uber driver and they feel in more danger reporting it because that person knows where they live. I have friends who have been raped by their husbands and they don't report it because they know that it's going to be way worse for their life to make their husbands mad. So understand that, yes, that is the world that we live in, and it's not okay. And it is often worse for a woman to report being hurt than to try to seek after justice. We live in a society that is rape culture, that supports rapists, where they get away with that and women are hurt. And what we're talking about right now is the aftermath, right? The aftermath of it's so incredibly common for women to be hurt. And what we're talking about here is disordered eating. And it's very important to understand the relationship or lack of relationship between those things. Because we have a stigma in this world that if a woman is raped or hurt or assaulted or abused, that can turn into an eating disorder. And then if somebody's honest about their eating disorder, then people have this assumption that this horrible trauma has happened to them, and there's stigma around an eating disorder, and there's stigma around having trauma happen to you. And so it makes it really difficult, and it keeps it in a lot of shame and this place of, just secret of this and secret of that, and don't talk about that, because there's such this attached stigma. And so this is what happens. Horrible things happen. You're a kid, you get raped, you get abused, you get molested, whatever it is. And then life goes on, and some of us develop eating disorders. And so what happens is we go to therapy or we go to groups and we start talking about it, and we are told by professionals that of course you're depressed, of course you're anxious, of course you have an eating disorder, because this is one of the most important lies to be aware of. Because all of these horrible things happened to you, you have an eating disorder and you're depressed and you're anxious. And so we better sort through all of those things so that you can be free from your eating disorder. I know that you thought that it was going to be about food. I know that you came here because you thought that you wanted to stop eating food in huge quantities uncontrollably in secret. But what this is really about is this past trauma. So let's just keep on digging that up. And if you didn't have past trauma, there must just be something you're not aware of. So let's just keep on looking at your past until we find some past trauma. And we live in this lie because we're being told that we've got to sort through all of this so that we can be free of our eating disorder. Now, there's nothing wrong with sorting through your trauma. There is nothing wrong with healing from that. That is all great. But the idea that you have to, because someone else hurt you, that you have to revisit all of that and sort through all of that with these things that happen against your will, or you're never going to be able to eat normally again, or you're never even going to be able to have a little bit of peace from this eating disorder that's just going to be with you for the rest of your life. That is an absolute lie. And it is a lie that is perpetuated and perpetuated. And so, okay, well, we've got to sort through all of this trauma first. And now we have this huge wall up in front of us. First, we had the huge thing to overcome of ending our eating disorder. And now we have this huge wall in front of us. Okay, well, now we have to sort through all of our trauma. And you have the burden that you can't have freedom until you undo the damage that somebody else did to you. It's not only not fair, it's insane. And here's the kicker. That when the burden is on you, the victim, to this is the sort of thing that women get told. Well, you've got to forgive the person that raped you, or you're never going to be able to heal and be done with your eating disorder. Oh, you've got to relive all of those details. You've got to completely disrupt your life. You've got to go back and revisit that, or you're never going to be done with your eating disorder if you ever want to eat normally again. And you've got all of these things out in front of you, and we're told, well, you have to. And here's the thing, is that we have coached women who have been doing that for 25 years, for a quarter of a century. They've been going to therapy, and they've been going to groups, and they've relived their identity. We had a woman who came to us, she said something so wise. she said there's nothing else to talk about. She had sorted through every past trauma, stress, anxiety trigger, and she had gained 100 pounds and she still had an eating disorder. And then we partnered with her, and in 6 weeks, she didn't have an eating disorder anymore. And we never talked about her trauma. Now, she said, you know what? It was great to be able to sort through that. It was just wonderful to be able to get my past trauma resolved. But you know what? It wasn't worth spending 25 years of my life to try to do that in order to end an eating disorder. I could have ended my eating disorder, and then I could have sorted through all of that without gaining 100 pounds. And so that is what is so important, so important. And hey, you guys, it's so amazing to have you on. I know that this is an intense topic and your comments are amazing. Okay, all right, wonderful. I love these comments here, you guys. End the stigma, life-changing, thank you. Yeah, and feel free to, comment, hearts, likes, love that you guys are part of this community. So it's really adding insult to injury. You know what's really awful? To forgive your rapist, spending hours of crying in therapy, and then still have an eating disorder because it was never caused by trauma. Let's get rid of that lie. It can be started by trauma. It can be started by restrictive eating. It can be started by lots of things. The cool thing is that doesn't matter. However it started, you can still be done with your eating disorder. We've seen it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. You may have turned to food for comfort and protection. But you know what? Right now, today, when you go through the fast food line in 2 different or 3 different fast food places and you hide the garbage in a public dumpster so your family doesn't see it, when everyone wonders, wow, how is she so healthy? She just eats like a bird. And you realize that if they only knew that you couldn't eat right now because you were so full because you just binged on candy in a parking lot, what you're doing today is not to comfort you with something that happened 20 years ago. And honestly, you're probably not even thinking about it. You're just really confused about why on earth you're watching yourself eat the food that you know is killing you, and you can't stop, and you feel completely out of control. So it's a habit now. We do it because we have a habit to do it. It doesn't matter how it started. It's a habit now, and then we just can break that habit. And that's exactly what we show women how to do all over the world. You can feel however you want. I want you to really hear this. You can feel however you want. There is no have to. You can sort through your trauma. You can forgive those that hurt you. You can stay angry. You can move on with your life and not sort through your trauma. You can say, you know what? I don't really care to forgive the person that hurt me because it wasn't okay what they did. You can feel however you want. And that is not going to hold you back from being able to be free and done with an eating disorder. And this is a stigma that we have to disconnect because it is holding women back all over the world from even seeking the help that they need to truly fix this, because they've been told by so many people, but you can't hope to fix it until you've gone back and sorted through all of this. And then if you sort through all of it, let's say you spend the next 10 years sorting through horrible trauma that's happened to you and you still have an eating disorder, do you know what you're told? Well, there must be more trauma to sort through. Look, you haven't had any relief from your eating disorder. It must be something else that we need to look into. And that cycle can happen for the rest of your life. There are women every day that die of their eating disorders. They're not dying because of their sadness from past trauma. They're dying from the way that they are eating. And they have spent their entire lives and their entire identities trying to sort through more and more and more trauma just in hopes to end their eating disorder. And then their eating disorder is what takes them out. With bulimia, binging and purging, your heart can stop anytime that you purge. And there are women that are continuing to go back to that, leaving behind families, ending their lives, having their legacy being found dead on the bathroom floor with something that they chose to do, which was stop their heart by throwing up all the food that they just ate and they didn't know how to stop, and thinking, well, I simply can't do otherwise because I haven't sorted through my trauma yet. That's a problem. Here's the truth. This is what it looks like for our grads. We have a grad after a decade of bulimia, now completely free. Yeah, she might have had some traumatic things happen, but you know what? We never asked her about it. She just went ahead and got free. Then we had a woman who had horrible things happen to her. And you know what? After working together, she was probably about the 7-week mark that she was completely free from her decades of an eating disorder. And you know what she said was even better than being free from her eating disorder? It was knowing that there was nothing wrong with her. It was knowing that she was never broken all along. It was knowing that the thing that somebody else did to her didn't make her broken forever. She was never broken in the first place. She had just been told by some trusted professionals that she was. And when she came to the truth of, oh, I can just end this habit, I can just break this eating disorder, I'm not broken, but I can break that habit, then she was done. And she was even more grateful to know that she wasn't broken and that her past didn't determine her future. How furious. What a horrible thing to think that because somebody else did something to you, that your entire future is determined to have this horrible relationship with food because somebody else violated you. That was not okay what they did, but it doesn't mean that you have to keep on hurting yourself because of it so many years later. Had another one of our grads horribly abused by her father, had been told by lots of people, oh, well, you've got to sort through that. And honestly, it never felt right to her. She was at a clinic and she was with a group of women that were being told, you know what, you are broken. The faster you give up on ever finding a solution, the better. You have an eating disorder. You will for the rest of your life. Plan to come back here at least once a year. Plan to save up $30,000 for every month that you come back here. Plan to take time off of work and time away from your family because you know what, you've got bulimia. So you're just going to always have that. And when you come back here every year and spend $30,000 every year and leave your family every year, that's going to at least provide you a little bit of relief from the broken craziness that you are. And she stood up and she walked out. And she got in contact with us. And after 17 years of bulimia, she's free. And now she's doing things that she always dreamed of her whole life with her career and with her family and with her friends because she doesn't have an eating disorder anymore. She had horrible, horrible abuse from her father. And you know what? She told us about that after she was done with her eating disorder when she was graduating. She just said, hey, by the way, I want you to know how much I've overcome. And that was a beautiful thing for her to share. But you know what? We never asked because it doesn't matter. Or here's one. Oh, the reason that I keep myself fat is to protect me from being hurt. The reason that I stay so big is because I was hurt when I was little, and I just know that if I keep myself big and unattractive, then nobody will come and hurt me. This is the sort of idea that is perpetuated. And then people do that very thing. They keep themselves unhealthy and they binge and they say, oh, well, you know, I could simply never let myself get healthy because aren't I doing this because I want to protect myself from being hurt? This very thing came up from an amazing woman who graduated from our program a little while ago. She's almost 60 years old, and she realized that she didn't have to hurt herself anymore and keep herself at a certain size or an unhealthy place because 50 years ago, somebody hurt her. She didn't have to hurt herself. It was not okay that she was hurt. And you know what? After 50 years, she doesn't have to hurt herself anymore. And she can just not have an eating disorder anymore. And now she knows, you know what? It doesn't matter if you're fat and it doesn't matter if you're thin. You can still get hurt. But when we perpetuate this idea of like, oh, well, she keeps herself so big because she's trying not to be hurt. And when we internalize those ideas ourselves, it is extremely damaging because where does that put us? Where does that keep us? So I want you guys to understand what we really must do. We have to stop telling women that they're broken and have to fix themselves to eat normally. It's a habit that you break, and we can do it in a couple of months. And we've done it hundreds and hundreds of times. And then all of these awful things that happen, you can have your energy to heal yourself. And you can be able to focus on your therapy or the people that love you, or being able to extend forgiveness if you want to, and you never have to. But if you want to do any of those things, we have seen women do incredible work on themselves in their life. Now that they have 80% of their brain power back every day because it's not going toward their eating disorder. Now that they're not concerned about killing themselves with their eating disorder. Now that they're not having to deal with all of these health issues because of their eating disorder. Now that they're not having to wake up every day and count calories and measure meals and guilt themselves about how they're eating. Now they can focus on real issues in their life, because they're not in this eating disorder anymore. You get that back. And with that back, you can do whatever you want with your mental energy and your freedom and your joy. We work with so many women who have been raped and abused and assaulted. And we work with ones that haven't, that they have an eating disorder and none of that ever happened to them. And they've been very confused when they go and try to fix their eating disorder and someone's like, well, some sort of trauma must have happened to you. They're like, no, really, I just had an awesome childhood and no one's ever hurt me. But whether somebody has been hurt or not, they feel safe in our community to open up about anything. And we don't ask it of them. And many of them don't share, and that's fine. But we work with so many women who have been raped because they are women. Not because their assault gave them an eating disorder. You take any group of women, you take a group of attorneys, you take a group of grocery store clerks, brunettes, blondes, women with second toes longer than their big toes. You put any sort of group of women together in the world, and guess what? You're going to find that lots of them have been hurt and raped and abused. And there are lots of women who have been hurt that don't have an eating disorder. So here's the thing. Until we take the shame out of both eating disorders and being a victim of abuse, it just perpetuates the cycle. Stop assuming that, you guys. Stop telling that to other people and stop thinking about it yourself, about you. If you've been hurt, yes, that's awful. And we believe you, and we want you to have the help and the support that you need. If you have an eating disorder, no, you don't have to sort through any of that trauma before you can be free. I'm not saying don't sort through it. I'm saying do whatever you want, but just know that you don't have to do that before you can get free. There aren't 1,000 obstacles in your way that you have to sort through. Your trauma and all of your insecurities and your personal development and your anxiety and all of those things that you've put up in the way of, well, I simply can't be free until I have all the coping mechanisms I need. It's just not true. You can just be done now, right now. And the first step is to book a session with us so we can get you the foundation of freedom and really know how to best get you there as an individual. And we're going to either be able to show you how to be done and free, or we're going to direct you to where you need to go from there. But what this takes is a one-on-one conversation where we can really understand what's going on so we can know how to best serve you. And we do free breakthrough sessions where we give you that very gift. You can go to lifewithlydia.com/apply. Again, that's lifewithlydia.com/apply. And you can book a session with our team where we are going to get you the foundation of freedom. And we're not going to judge you, and we're not going to shame you, and we're not going to tell you that you probably need to sort through your trauma before you get help. We're going to show you the quickest way to not have an eating disorder anymore. And that's our promise to you. So again, that's lifewithlydia.com/apply. It's so awesome to have you guys on today. Thank you for being here for such an important topic. And Lydia, the lifestyle coach, signing off. Mwah. Bye, guys.